Hello, everybody. My name is Joseph Aguilar, and I'm an assistant teaching professor in HUA, and I'm primarily a fiction writer. I'm going to frame and share an excerpt from a collaborative novel that I'm writing. Washington State University professor Brian McNeil claims that mestizo identity encompasses far more than racial and ethnic mixing. It also involves a uniquely synergistic state of mind with, quote, frameworks that are devoid of notions of cultural, genetic, gender, or sexual orientation superiority. A mindset that questions boundaries, that prioritizes relationships of equality over relationships of domination. My current writing project embraces this mestizo perspective. It's a collaborative novel written with my colleague Kate McIntyre, featuring a mixed-race protagonist navigating a world where strange fungi sprouting from the Earth's mycelial network have given dogs the capacity to acquire human language. During the novel, the protagonist's mind state gradually shifts from the rigid, domineering perspective of his father to the more open, non-hierarchical perspective of his immigrant mother. And I'm going to share the beginning of my novel. The story starts with the protagonist at a weight loss summer camp right before the world changes forever. As you can see in the novel's early stages, the narrator, Tom, views the world in strict binaries: skinny and overweight, white and non-white, authentic and fake, friend and enemy. By the novel's end, Tom's worldview will shift dramatically as he embraces a mestizo identity and all its contradictions and permeabilities. Our first evening at Fat Camp, Jeff, the owner and impresario, herded us big guys into the Truth Hut, a fake Native American longhouse. The air stank like cheap pine candles. Falsa blankets padded the walls. Anyone with their dignity intact would have been offended by the heavy-handed cultural appropriation, but the 40 of us had paid big bucks for a month at Jeff's weight loss camp named Rancho Gordo, so that ruled us out. Our nervous voices hummed through the room. In the flickering candlelight, I could tell Jeff topped 6 feet, and his shiny performance t-shirt and bike shorts emphasized his seamlessness. Toned midriff, no loose flesh under the arms. Even his earlobes were attached. His body looked less like a goal for us to achieve than a walking insult. I bet his stomach could hold no more than a yogurt cup. The night before I'd arrived at camp, I'd polished off a rack of ribs and all the fixings by myself. My belly stretched tight as a drum, a big drum, a timpani. We campers could never resemble Jeff because he was another species entirely. It was like a gang of groundhogs had determined a month of fasting and cardio could make them as long and lithe as weasels. Though maybe I had a chance because my father was a weasel. He thought he was better than my mom and me and my sister Nikki because of his slenderness, and in my mother's case, his command of the English language. Mom had immigrated from Mexico when she was 18, and she quickly fell into my 30-year-old father's clutches. Fell in love, she still insisted. Nikki and I had inherited her rounder shape, her broad shoulders, and her kindness. Jeff shrilled his little whistle to get our attention. He assigned us into cabin groups of 5 and strutted around to each unit, handing out mechanical pencils and small leather-bound notepads emblazoned with the title, Whole Heart Journal. "These men will be your tribe. Better get to know each other," he crowed. His whistle dangled from a neon cord around his neck. It looked like a toy. I was second largest in our group, behind a rosy-cheeked, toddler-faced guy named Gus, who had a good 40 pounds on me. Just below me was Michael, red-headed and squinty, then Spence, whom I'm glad to see was Asian. I always felt better when I wasn't the only person of color in the room. The thinnest, relatively, was a guy named Rick, who was second handsomest. I won't say who was handsomest because I'm modest. Our cabin group fumbled for topics to discuss in a dark corner where even our ample asses didn't pat us against Jeff's hand-hewn planks. Right away, Michael's cold, sweaty handshake repulsed me, and I hated his snide tone as he explained how a real Native American longhouse would have had animal hide on the door's interiors to trap warmth. So I told Michael a real Native American longhouse would also have real Native Americans, not a bunch of dumpy white guys bitching about the insulation. He narrowed his eyes at me, shook his head, and swung around to talk to Gus. That confirmed it. Michael and I were enemies. Rick touched my shoulder. "Are you Native?" he asked in a sweet baritone voice that I had to lean in to hear over the chatter. "Sorry?" "Native American." "I'm native to America," I said. "You?" At age 22, I should have been used to being asked why I'm brown, but it still caught me off guard every time it happened. It's different when a Latino is asking me if I'm Latino or a Korean's wondering if I'm perhaps half Korean. It's just somebody searching for common ground. But this guy was as white gets, with glossy blonde hair down to his shoulders and a Hawaiian shirt unbuttoned to display a moist tuft of curls between his sagging breasts, and I owed him nothing. I hope I didn't offend you, Rick said, like he'd read my thoughts. I do a lot of work with the Haskell Indian Nations Garden Project near my store. Lawrence, I said, seat of Douglas County, Kansas. I'm from Lawrence too, I admitted. Rick let out a cry of delight and grasped my hand warmly. Thanks for your attention. Appreciate it.